can say afternoon now, so good afternoon.
This meeting is being recorded.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Tammy Shook, and I am serving as the Interim Deputy Director for County Operations for the division. And I have the pleasure of serving as the lead on the practice standards implementation team, working with our vendor Public Knowledge. And I want to allow Emmy Weibel to introduce herself. Emmy is also with the division. So Emmy, if you would introduce yourself.
I'll be happy to. My name is Emmy Weibel. I am also working on the practice standards, and when I'm not doing that, I am the manager for the Regional Abuse and Medical Specialist team, which is just starting out. Thanks, Emmy.
Thank you, Emmy. Okay. I think we're ready to go to the next slide. So our agenda for today is we just want to go over the goals of the open house. We're going to talk a little bit with a brief overview of the practice standards. We're going to talk about the kickoff webinar. Some of you probably were able to join us for that, and if not, we'll talk a little bit about that and where you can find it if you'd like to see it. We're going to update you on where we are with our implementation plan, and we're definitely wanting to engage in answering any questions that you may have about the practice standards. Just remember to mute yourselves if you're on the phone or on the website, and introduce yourselves in chat. You can also put questions in chat, raise your hand, and we will do our best to manage all of that and make sure that we're getting your questions answered. I think we're ready to go on to the next slide. So the goal of the open house today really is to engage you in two-way communication, making sure that you are up to date on where we are with the implementation of the practice standards. We want to talk to you about what the training is going to look like, how we're going to communicate with you about practice standards implementation and their next steps. And again, we just want to answer any questions that you may have about practice standards implementation and training.
We did have a kickoff webinar where we introduced the practice standards. We discussed kind of the implementation plan for how we would go forward with the practice standards. We reviewed the various communication standards, reviewing the latest information, and those. I'm getting an email, a thing in the chat that I'm breaking up. Let me try to correct. So we still use communications through North Carolina Blueprint or emails. We have a practice standards website, and then just getting an email that text is breaking up. And also got an Ask Us website that you can go to. I'm going to step out and try to do a different network and see if that fixes the communication.
Yeah, Emmy, this is Julie Breedlove. I'll take over while you're working on your audio issues. Eliza, can you hear me? Just making sure. Okay, great. Emmy, I'll take over while you're fixing that. Hi everyone, this is Julie Breedlove with Public Knowledge. I'll help Emmy out while she's working on it. So what Emmy's saying is we had a kickoff webinar where we introduced the practice standards, we discussed the implementation plan, and we also reviewed the communication channels for the practice standards. I put in the chat the link where you can review the kickoff webinar. And then I'll also put in the chat the link if you do not currently receive the blueprint email that Sarah Lewis sends out. We send out communications around the practice standards and provide updates for that. So I've put in the chat where you can sign up for the blueprint. We want you to sign up for that so you guys can get information around the blueprint and updates around the practice standards and implementation. And then also we talked about our email address that you can send questions to. I'm going to put that in the chat as well. So if you have any questions around implementation of the practice standards and about what's coming up next, you guys can feel free to email us and we will answer your questions around implementation. I'm going to stop and check in with Emmy to see if she's able to talk to us again. Emmy, you there? All right, we can keep going to the next slide, Eliza. All right, Emmy was going to do a quick overview of our practice standards, if you guys will remember from the kickoff webinar, and also we have highlighted these in the past blueprints. So our practice standards have essential functions of communicating, engaging, assessing, implementing, and planning. These are also grounded in being culturally competent, trauma-informed, safety focused, and family-centered. We have practice standards for each of leaders, for supervisors, and also for social workers. So these practice standards really cover and are a foundation for all of our work in North Carolina and really provide a foundation for our practice model. So we are going to move to the next slide. Great, and so our implementation of the practice standards covers training, which we're going to talk about today in further detail. We are also going to talk about communications that are included in implementation of our practice standards and activities that are involved in transfer of learning. So all of these things are going to be included in what we are doing to work on implementing our practice standards.
Thank you, Julie. And so this is just the timeline of our training plan for the practice standards. You'll note that I can't quite believe it. We're almost in the month of March already. It seems like Christmas was just yesterday, but here we are almost in March, when you'll see that the leader and state staff training will occur. Then we're going to pick up in April the supervisor training e-learnings, and then the social worker e-learnings. Training will happen in the fall from September to November. The leaders training dates and times, we wanted to advertise those because those are coming up quickly. Those are the dates of the leaders training dates and times that also came out in a Dear County Director letter last week, along with all of the information on how to register. You need to do that through NCSW Learn for a training session. All of these are the same training. You don't have to attend all of them. You just pick one of them. And those are the training dates and times for the leaders training. So one of the big questions that most folks have are, which practice standards should I attend? You know, if I'm a worker, if I'm a supervisor, if I'm a leader. I know some of us function in multiple roles in our agencies, depending on the size of your agency and where you are in your agency's organizational chart. You may function as multiple things within your agency. So we want to talk through which practice standards training you should attend. And the first one that we're going to talk about is the leaders training. We want to make sure that we get all of our leaders trained. And you are considered a leader and should attend the leaders training if these responsibilities are some of the responsibilities you have on a daily basis. If you primarily are communicating with staff and stakeholders and community partners, if you're engaging with them and explaining your organization's goals, if you're assessing and analyzing data and work performance and creating strategic plans, working with staff and stakeholders on short and long-term strategic plans, and guiding and monitoring those change efforts. So those are the leaders. So again, we're not caught up in titles here. It's about job function. So if your job function includes any of these, you would want to attend the leaders training. Emmy, I'm going to check back in with you to see if you're with us and able to be heard.
So I'm here. Can you hear me, Tammy?
I can.
Can't hear me. You can or cannot?
I can. Yes, ma'am.
Okay. So for the supervisors, the e-learning training. So if your primary job or you have responsibilities that include communicating with the staff and stakeholders in the community, you're going to want to attend the supervisors e-learning training. If your job involves actively engaging the workers and families, or encourages staff to thoroughly assess situations, so you're doing that direct line supervision throughout the process of working with families to determine the need for CPS, then you're going to be in the supervisors training. If your job is to coach and mentor workers on how to synthesize this information or to engage youth and families, or coach, mentor, and provide feedback to workers regarding progress made in implementing, then the supervisor training is the one for you. Next slide, please. Oh, sorry. These trainings will be from August of this year. And for the workers, for social workers, if your primary job or your responsibilities include that communication with families and partners, or engaging the families to participate in the child welfare system. So you're kind of doing that first meeting with the families and working the case with the families. If your job is to gather, size, assess, collaborate with families, support plans with the families, goals for the families, working on safety, permanence, and well-being, implementing those plans, and linking families to resources, services in the community, then you're going to want to take the social worker e-learning trainings. Those courses will be available beginning in September of this year. Next, please.
So another thing that folks want to know, Amy, I'm going to jump in because you're breaking up just a little bit. So I'm going to jump in on this one. How will you be supported after you attend the training? So we know that just attending the training is not sufficient in order to implement the training standards. We want to make sure that you're supported after you attend your training. So here are some of the ways that we will support you after you attend the training. For leaders, we will have virtual weekly options for them to join us and get feedback from peers and how to implement the practice standards from coaches and just seek additional input and feedback. For supervisors, the same thing. You'll have virtual office hours weekly from mid-April through September. And again, that's just an opportunity for you to talk with coaches about the practice standards, get feedback and input from peers who may be implementing them at the same time, and strategize on how you can implement this in your county.
So for the workers, we're going to have batting practice for social workers, and this will also be virtual. It will be weekly from September to October, and this is really going to be an opportunity to learn from peers, to ask questions from the practice standards, from coaches, and seek input and feedback about the practice standards, how they're doing with implementing it, questions, comments that they have. It's really going to be a great opportunity for the staff. Next slide. So some of the training tools will include guides for each training for all the leaders, supervisors, and social workers. And then some of the fidelity tools will include self-assessments for leaders, supervisors, and social workers, observation and documentation tools that leaders can use to observe supervisors, and for supervisors to observe social workers. And the tools will help provide feedback to you and to others on where you are on kind of this spectrum of how you're doing with the implementing of the practice standards, where your staff are, and how to monitor for improvement. these tools are not mandatory for you to use. So we're not saying that everyone's going to get several new forms that they have to implement. But I really think you're going to find these tools helpful. So if you're struggling, or if you're wondering, do you have a person who's struggling with engagement? You're going to have some tools that you'll be able to use to kind of assess that, and then to monitor how they're moving forward. So these tools will be really beneficial, especially I think for the worker to kind of see where they are, but also the supervisor and leaders to see how the worker is moving forward in improving those skills. Next slide, please.
So how will the information about the practice standards be communicated with you? We've talked about this a little bit as we started this conversation, but just as a reminder, some of the communication tools for communicating with you about the practice standards will be Dear County Director letters. We sent one last week. The Blueprint weekly emails, I don't think we can overemphasize how important it is that you sign up for those. That is one of the primary ways that we will communicate with you about the practice standards. Also an opportunity to just talk about the practice standards and implementation of those. You do have the practice standards website. You can see that on the screen. It's also been put into the chat. That's a great place to go and look at recorded webinars, such as the kickoff webinar. This webinar will also go onto that website so that you can reference that if you'd like to look back at things. And then the email address. If you have a question and you just want to go ahead and get an answer to it, you can send an email to the email address that you see on the screen. Amy, are you with us?
I am. So how can we prepare for the implementation? Next slide. So just watch out for the continued communication that we'll have through the DCDLs and the Blueprint. Go ahead and check out that website, the standards website, and read about the practice standards. If you didn't get an opportunity to be a part of the kickoff webinar, go ahead and watch that on the website. Look out for the training announcements. And most importantly, make sure that you have an active NCSW Learn account, because that's where the trainings will be posted. And so that's where you'll register to connect to the trainings. Next slide, please. So what questions do you have, and answers can we give you?
You can put your questions in the chat. We'll be happy to reply to them there. If you, since we have quite a number, I think we have 125 people on the webinar, and that is, I am so excited. We are so glad you're here. And if you have questions, you can put them in the chat. Maybe that would be the best. How many training modules are required for each level? Great question, great question. So the leaders training is a 2-hour webinar. So if you are doing the leaders training, you will do a 2-hour webinar. Help me, Julie, on the math on the others. For the social work supervisor, it's 10 e-learnings, correct, Julie?
Yes. So yeah, Tammy, if you don't mind, I can talk through. Eliza, please feel free to jump in. So for the leaders trainings, we will be going through all of the essential functions. So there are 5 essential functions. So we will be talking through those. It's a 2-hour virtual event. It's a live event. So you guys, we will be talking through each of those essential functions as a leader. For the supervisors, there are 10 different modules. There are 2 modules for each of the essential functions. So there is an instructional module for each of the essential functions, and then there's a scenario. And then for the social workers, there are 18 modules. So there are for the social workers, the 18 modules are short modules. They're 5 to 8 minutes in length. So they are shorter in length, and they are very scenario based. So I see a couple of questions in the chat about let's see, let me go back. So I think I've answered how many training modules are required for each level. For the supervisor, or for the leaders, it's just a 2-hour training. For supervisors, it's 10 modules. For the supervisors, each module is about 20 minutes, 25 minutes in length. And what we'll be doing for supervisors is the 2 modules will be released each month from April through August. So it'll be around 40 minutes worth of training for each month. And then the social worker modules will be released around October. So it's 18 modules, 5 to 8 minutes in length each. And then I see a question about, should leaders take all modules? We're really leaving that up to you. We definitely want you to take the leaders training, and then the supervisors training and the social workers training are e-learnings. So they're available on demand. So you guys could take them at your leisure. And then Tammy,
Julie,
I'm gonna
jump on this one. It says, do all the modules for social workers apply to all service areas, such as investigations, in-home, and permanency? The beauty of these modules is that, yes, they apply across the board. They are not service area specific. These are the practice standards that we want all social work staff, all supervisors, all leaders in North Carolina to share and have. We believe that these are the skills that we all need in order to do our jobs well with the families and children that we serve, regardless of what service area that you function in. Great questions. So just as a reminder, Mick was saying he couldn't find the training, the leaders training on NCSW Learn. Remember, the leaders training is a webinar, so you will find it under the webinars section for registration for leaders. The e-learnings for supervisors are not yet up in NCSW Learn.
There was a question posted about, are these trainings mandatory for child welfare staff?
Yes.
Yes.
And that was
yes,
that was reflected in the Deer County Director letter that went out last week.
Yep.
Mary asked, and I just want to throw it out there, that is this available for your interns, for your CWEC interns or interns? Absolutely. We want your interns to get this training. And yes, Mick, it can count towards your hours. Absolutely. So those 24 continuing hours that we're all required to have annually, these hours of training can apply to that, and it will be tracked in NCSW Learn for that purpose. That's why we're doing all of the registrations through NCSW Learn. Other questions or comments, concerns? If we missed a question earlier in the chat, you might have to retype it. I'm looking back through to make sure we got everything. Yes, they are. Tina Howard, Wake County. Our staff who have had SOP training still required to take these trainings? Yes. So safety organized practice is the umbrella of the practice model that North Carolina is implementing. The practice standards are one component of that. The safety organized practice tools, signs of safety tools that you may have been trained in is another prong of that, but this is not, it's not either or, it's both. So they both work in combination to be the practice model. And the practice standards, again, are those behaviors that we want to see exhibited at all levels of the organization in order to have our practice model fully implemented. Someone asked, who was the Deer County Director letter sent to? I don't see it on the slide. It was sent to all of the usual suspects that the Deer County Director letters are sent to. It was sent last week. I don't know, Teresa, let me see if I can figure out where that went. When will the regional child welfare consultants persist? Okay. Andrew, and I'm not sure who that is, when will the regional child welfare consultants participate in the training to help support county staff? They are required to take the training as well. And again, it's going to be e-learning. So the beauty of that is that it's online on demand. All state staff will be taking the leaders training in an event that's separate and apart just for them before it's rolled out to the rest of the leaders across the state for the counties. So we are definitely in partnership, and we will all be taking the training as well. Even those of us who have worked really hard to develop and implement it, we will be taking the leaders training and the additional trainings as well. Yes, so the question is, will this information be added to pre-service, or will this be an ongoing requirement moving forward? Great question, Jessica. So these practice standards for social workers will be a part of pre-service training. For those of you that may not know, we are also in the process of doing a training redesign for pre-service. We are working on that now. I'm so excited about it, and the practice standards will be a foundational component of the pre-service training and definitely be rolled into that. The beauty of these, Jessica, are their e-learning. So let's say, for example, someone comes through pre-service training, is exposed to these e-learnings and pre-service training about the practice standards. They start working for you in your county, and you think, they need a little more help in how to engage. You can revisit the e-learning modules and have them rewatch those. You can then debrief those with them. So it's always going to be there as a tool for you to use to reinforce these practice standards, these behaviors that we want staff to be able to demonstrate in their work. Great questions. Did I answer everyone's question? Do you have other questions? Let's see. Will policy reflect the changes to include safety organized practice? Yes, so policy, we're working really closely with policy consultants to make sure that when we're ready to say all of this has been implemented and we have the tools trained, obviously that will be reflected in policy. We're not quite there yet. Safety organized practice, again, is the umbrella. This is the practice standards, which is a piece of that, which is absolutely foundational. You have to be able to use these practice standards and be able to exhibit these behaviors to truly engage with families and use the tools that we will be training as part of safety organized practice. Again, great questions. And Julie has reminded me that our next open house for practice standards will be March the 23rd at 4 p.m. We are offering the open house at different times throughout the month so that we can catch people at different times. Maybe those who couldn't attend today at this time could attend the 23rd at 4 p.m. So more information will come out about that with a link for you to attend, and that will be happening through the blueprint. You can go on the website if you need to have a reminder of when that is. But again, mark your calendars, March 23rd at 4 p.m. We will host another open house just like this. Will it be the same content? No, we're probably going to be updating the content as we go. There will, on the 23rd of March, we will have had some of the leaders training. So we may be able to provide some feedback about how that's going. We want to really keep this as interactional as possible so that as you begin to engage in the trainings and the e-learnings, then we can have further conversations about that. Where can you sign up for the blueprints? Let's put that, we put it in the chat, but we can put it in there again. There's we need to, I'm getting a message that,
Julie put it in the chat, the email address to sign up for the blueprints.
Yeah. Let me see, there it is again. There's the email. Some folks are saying they didn't get the DCDL, but we'll make sure that that got sent out. But Kodiak, I guess, is the one that sends it out to the supervisors listservs, the DCDL to the supervisors listservs. I'll make a note to make sure that that got sent out by Kodiak so that the supervisors listserv got the DCDL.
Tammy, if you give me just a moment, I might be able to drop it in the chat. So
that would be great.
If you can do your little song and dance.
I'll do my spiel. Yeah, I'll do my spiel. Other questions or comments that folks have? These are great questions. No, not all of, no. Wayne County's asking if all will be scheduled for noon. No, the next one is scheduled for 4 p.m. on the 23rd. We tried to stagger. Maybe we need to get some feedback about that. We tried to stagger them so that people had the opportunity. I know some people can meet at noon, some people can't. It's lunchtime. Some people get kind of a little upset if you take their lunch all the time. So we wanted to offer it at a variety of times. Someone from Rowan County has put an attachment in there. Is that the DCDL, Micah Ennis from Rowan County? Is that what you're putting in there?
Yes, it's the link to the DCDL, sorry.
Well, bless your heart. Thank you so much. We appreciate that. Thank you for jumping on that and throwing it in there. So Micah Ennis is the hero of the day from Rowan County who put in
Thank
the DCDL
you.
link. Thank you,
No
Micah.
pressure. Jeez.
No pressure. No pressure. So there is the link to the DCDL if you want to pull that up and grab that for yourself. Other questions or comments? Going once. Well, I just have to say that we were kind of afraid we wouldn't have anyone join us. So we're just absolutely beyond thrilled that we had this many folks jump on with us today. I think you can tell by my excitement. I've been in child welfare a long time. These practice standards are good. This is good stuff, folks. This is what we want our staff to be exhibiting, what we need to hold ourselves accountable for as leaders to exhibit. It's a great opportunity to really further the great work that we're doing out there across the state of North Carolina. So I'm super excited about it. I hope you will be too, and just join us in this journey that is the child welfare system in North Carolina. And we really hope that you'll come back with us next month and just keep on keeping on. Any final comments, Emmy, from you, or any final questions?
No, I share your excitement. I think this is something that we've kind of waited for a long time, and I'm really excited that we're finally getting on with it and can't wait for the training to start.
We are very excited about the training and very excited to start getting feedback. I didn't know what an e-learning was, folks. I had no idea what that even meant until we started working on this project. And so I've learned a lot just about programming and development, and just excited to share that work with you. I also want to give a shout out to the design teams. Those of you on this call that are on the design teams, wow, like the work that you've done, the input that you've had both in the development of every one of these practice standards, the feedback you've provided around the e-learnings and the trainings, all of that's been incorporated. I am so excited for you to see the final product and see how your input and your feedback really informed all of this work. Do each of the learning modules include an exam? Good question, good question. So the e-learnings are formatted in a way that they have learning questions throughout. So you'll get an opportunity to answer questions during the module. And it's one of those things that if you say the wrong thing, or you guess the wrong thing, or you make the wrong thing, it tells you that, but it tells you why, or it gives you the correct answer. So it's really engaging and something that I think staff can really get into. Again, the e-learnings for the social workers are very short and very focused. So I think they'll find them engaging and something that they can easily remember and refer back to. Good question. Will all of the future meet? No, I think I answered that one already. Maybe I'm too far up on the comments. Give me 1 second. Here we go. There is a very short quiz. Julie reminded me there is a very short quiz at the end of each module just to make sure people are paying attention. Like, we don't want you to turn it on and go, do a load of laundry or something. We want you to pay attention to it and watch it. And so the little quiz at the end is similar to what you do for anything that you've done online before. It's not like the LSAT or anything. We want you to just pay attention to the module and be able to answer those questions. But it's interactive, So you're going to have the opportunity to click around in there and make those decisions so that you're learning the material as you're in the module. Thank you, Julie. I had forgotten there was that little quiz at the end. Any other questions? Julie and Eliza, are we at a place where we can